Welcome to Netflix, your quick stop for movie recaps. Get all the highlights and mind-blowing twists in just minutes. Our movie today talks about life in the 20th century, where an environmental collapse occurs, and the entire world is destroyed. Vegetables and fruits become extremely rare commodities, and even the soil is no longer suitable for farming. One day, John returns home with an orange, and his wife is overjoyed but wonders where he got it from. We learn that even the air has become polluted, and people walk around wearing masks to breathe properly. The government enforces a law limiting families to 2 children, but unfortunately, John has 3 children and hides their youngest daughter in a shelter to avoid detection. John becomes cautious when he learns the police are coming for him. Everything goes smoothly until one day, the police receive a tip-off and raid the house, searching every corner. They eventually hear the sound of their daughter crying out of fear. Determined to protect his family at all costs, John fights off the officers to save his daughter. Because of his actions, he is imprisoned for 2 years. Later, Elizabeth visits him in prison, finding him in poor condition due to the polluted air that threatens his life. She tells him their 2 children have been chosen to travel to a new land, and we learn they have created a time machine to rebuild Earth from scratch. However, the government refuses to let Zoe, their youngest, travel with them. Elizabeth asks John to find a way for them all to stay together. Before leaving, she gives him a mask, claiming he is sick and needs it to breathe. She pleads with the guard to let him keep it. After she leaves, John discovers the mask contains a laser gun with detailed instructions of her plan. He disables the tracking device and escapes from prison with ease. Wandering the streets, he goes to the address written on the paper, where he finds a large bag filled with weapons and money. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and the children arrive at the station. Her son, Josh, bids farewell to his only friend, promising to see her again soon. John meets with a well-known officer and pays him a large sum to allow Zoe to pass through the gate. Finally, he reunites with his wife and children. They walk quietly among the crowd until a guard grows suspicious and asks John to stop so he can inspect the bag. Elizabeth urges their 2 children to cross the barrier, assuring them she and their father will follow shortly. John manages to deal with the guard and jumps over the barrier at the last moment, reaching the new world. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself surrounded by guards who threaten him, his wife, and their young daughter. Once they learn Elizabeth is a doctor, they allow her to keep the child in exchange for becoming the head doctor of the new land's clinic. The family is amazed by the strange, primitive world around them, filled with nature and clean air, unlike their polluted home. They eventually reach the camp where they will live and meet the leader, Taylor, who explains how life will work there. He emphasizes the importance of learning from past mistakes, protecting the environment, and living peacefully. He outlines the rules of the place and asks them to adhere to them. Taylor also speaks privately with Elizabeth and John, explaining that he allowed their mistake to slide because doctors are scarce and always needed. He assigns Elizabeth to the clinic and warns John not to cause trouble to avoid punishment. John is tasked with working on the camp's farms. After settling into their new home, Zoe wanders outside and encounters a dinosaur eating leaves. She tries to approach it and feed it leaves with her hands. Her father is terrified upon seeing the creature but calms down when he realizes it is harmless. The next morning, John begins his new job, determined to follow instructions precisely. While standing on the fence, he sees a giant insect approaching and faints from fear, falling to the ground. However, he quickly recovers and resumes his work to prove his worth. Meanwhile, Elizabeth treats patients in the clinic, encountering strange insects and cases she has never seen before. Josh meets other young people his age and befriends a girl named Sky, who shows him her home and introduces him to her friends. She convinces him to join them on an outing outside the camp, and they visit a waterfall, spending time together. Josh is intrigued by mysterious markings on the ground, which Sky explains have been there since the first settlers arrived, though she knows nothing more about them. Elizabeth is forced to examine a captured criminal and is very afraid of him. Shortly after, the criminal attacks her, taking her hostage to escape. He forces a guard to drop his weapon and let him pass. Carter, the criminal, takes the weapon and blends into the crowd, trying to escape unnoticed. John becomes suspicious of him and decides to follow him. He manages to stop Carter just in time before he can kill Taylor, revealing this was Carter's plan all along. John's heroic act shocks everyone, showcasing his abilities and strength. Taylor decides to assign John to a suitable position, trusting him and bringing him closer. Taylor shares the history of the place, explaining that the criminal was part of a group that broke away from the system to create their own life. This group steals resources and weapons, staging a coup against the government. Taylor appoints John to the city's security team, giving him a prominent role. While discussing the situation, they notice military vehicles approaching the camp. Taylor warns his men to prepare for an attack. On their way, they encounter a ferocious dinosaur, which attacks and devours their sniper. Taylor orders John to drive the vehicle. And he takes his weapon and goes outside, luring the monster toward him, trying to get rid of it by any means. He is shocked when his weapon jams. Before the monster gets close enough to devour him, John arrives and runs over the monster with a car, saving Taylor for the second time. Meanwhile, the rest of the team deals with another monster until it gets scared and runs away. Emily, the leader of the rebels, appears and tells them she attacked to take Carter and won't leave without him. When Taylor refuses, she offers him a box full of meteorites in exchange for Carter. Since these materials are extremely rare in their world, Taylor decides to agree, seeing it as a fair deal. He tells her she must honor the agreement between them, emphasizing that she is responsible for supplying medicine and ammunition. Taylor refuses to give them any additional weaponry. After much discussion, he gives her some medicine and asks her to take her team and leave. On their way, they spot Sky's car and her companions by chance. They steal the car's energy cells, but Josh notices them and tries to stop them with his friends. Taylor becomes furious when he sees what happened through the cameras and informs John about what his son did, telling him that he and his friends stole the cars and left without permission. He warns that the gang might have kidnapped them all. John decides to take a risk and go search for his son, asking Elizabeth to watch over the girls until he returns. After bidding everyone farewell, he leaves. At that time, Sky and her friends are in the middle of the forest, unable to find a solution to their predicament. They notice a rebel car parked nearby and try to escape using it. When they open the door, the man inside warns them that there's a monster behind them. They all rush inside and lock themselves in. The situation becomes extremely dangerous as the monster circles the car, trying to reach them by any means. They realize they are trapped because the car also lacks a battery. Sky and Josh try to help the injured person with them, treating his wound as best they can. They remain in this state until nightfall, when other monsters begin arriving at the same location, surrounding their car from all sides. They all feel this could be the end for them and desperately try to find a way out of the car. One of them accidentally finds a radio device and manages to contact Taylor, describing their exact location. Suddenly, the monster attacks them, trying to grab one of them. Josh attempts to distract the monster as much as he can until Taylor and his team arrive, firing heavily at the creature, but nothing seems to affect it. After a while, the monster gets slightly scared and runs off in another direction. They can hardly believe it has moved away and hope for help to arrive soon. They are shocked when the radio signal cuts off, leaving them unable to communicate. One of the girls becomes extremely anxious and insists they must escape the car quickly before the monster returns. When everyone refuses, she decides to go out on her own. As soon as she steps out, the monster appears in front of her and attacks. Luckily, Taylor sees her just in time and saves her at the last moment. Her father is overjoyed to see her alive and well, as he had been very worried about her. Elizabeth provides her with first aid until they return to the camp. Taylor and the others then head back to rescue the young people from the car. Before they reach them, the monster manages to break the car door and forcibly drags one of them outside. Josh insists on helping and grabs a weapon, following them. He keeps firing at the monster until it releases the young man and runs away. Josh helps him get back on his feet and escape quickly. They decide to take energy sources from another car, install them, and use it to escape back to the camp. Sky stands guard with her weapon while they finish, but she is shocked when her ammunition runs out. She urges them to hurry because their lives are in danger. At that moment, the monster reappears in front of them, and no one knows what to do. The rescue team arrives just in time and saves them all. They insist on eliminating all the monsters before leaving, ordering the young people to hide in the car quickly. John rushes to his son to check on him, preventing the monster from getting close to him. Later, he and Taylor discover that these cars belong to the rebels and realize it was all a trap set by them. When they return to the camp, Elizabeth is overjoyed that her son is safe. The whole family gathers outside to watch the sky, enjoying the fresh air, which has become rare in their time. Meanwhile, a group of soldiers moves supplies. Suddenly, the train carrying the supplies explodes. One of them gets out to investigate the issue, but unfortunately, they are all killed by the monsters, ending their lives at that moment. The next day, Alicia decides to take some of the young people to train them and have them join their team. She teaches them how to handle problems or survive in the forest. When she finishes, she asks them to return home and goes to speak with Taylor. He tells her they will head out to search for the missing team from the previous night, as they should have returned long ago. In a short time, John is appointed to an important position, becoming Taylor's assistant in every mission. They all set out into the forest. After some time, they find the guards' corpses and realize they were killed by the monsters. However, They are puzzled by the manner of their deaths and try to understand the type of monster that attacked them. They take the bodies back to the camp and ask Elizabeth to examine them and determine the cause of death. With the help of her colleague at the clinic, they gather some information. She tells them that the creature responsible for this can sting its prey before killing it and draining its blood. She notes that its characteristics do not match any known predator. They realize they are dealing with a new type of monster. That same night, they hear very strange noises outside. John and his son go out to investigate and find a large number of strange birds gathered around the camp. When they throw some stones to scare them away, the birds attack. The two of them run and quickly hide, locking the door behind them. One of the birds viciously tries to attack John to sting him. He realizes that these are the creatures that killed the soldiers and warns everyone the next day about what could happen. Elizabeth's colleague suggests sending a field research team to closely observe this type of creature and gather more details. He explains that these birds only behave this way when they feel their lives are threatened. Tyler rejects the idea, telling him that it is against their law and that no one can leave the camp without his permission. He tries to find a way to stop these creatures. After a while, Josh and Sky wander through the market and notice the birds approaching them again. The birds begin to move in groups and attack all the camp residents. None of them understand what is happening or why the birds are acting with such brutality. Josh quickly takes Sky and hides under a large table, while everyone else looks for a place to hide to protect themselves from this strange attack. After a while, the birds disappear again, and they discover that 36 people were injured during the attack. Malcolm finds one of the bird corpses on the ground, decides to take it, and dissect it in the lab. He begins to discuss his theory, explaining that this type of bird migrates, which is why no one had seen them in this area before. He warns them that this could turn into a major disaster, as more birds are likely to appear and attack them constantly. Tyler uses his equipment to explore the area and is shocked to find millions of birds very close to them. Alyssa tells him that the exploration team found bird eggshells 3 years ago in the same area. At the time, no one paid much attention to it and decided to remove the eggshells and build the camp there, as the area was ideal for them. Tyler then realizes that the birds are attacking them because the land they are living on has been the birds' territory for many years. To the birds, the humans have invaded their land, and they are trying to reclaim it. When Malcolm learns the full story, he understands that the birds are willing to do anything to protect their home and will never back down. He advises everyone to prepare for more intense attacks. Tyler asks Alyssa to warn the people, advising them to gather their belongings, stay in their homes, and only go out if absolutely necessary. Malcolm and Elizabeth convince Tyler to capture 2 of the birds for research to find a solution to the problem. That night, John and Tyler go hunting and manage to catch the 2 birds they need. They immediately begin their research and discover that they can use the birds' pheromones to lure them to another location. They execute this plan, producing a large quantity of the pheromone and scattering it far from the camp to draw the birds away. Suddenly, the birds launch a massive attack on the camp, destroying houses to reach the humans. Despite their strong defenses, one bird manages to break in and attack Mark, who is responsible for protecting the youths. Josh tells everyone to run and hide in another room, forgetting that his sister is still hiding under the table, too scared to come out. The bird approaches her, ready to attack, but Josh arrives just in time to save her. He takes her to hide in the room with the others. Tyler and John decide to execute their plan, filling a large tank with pheromones and scattering it along the way as they leave the camp to lure the creatures away. The next day, everything returns to normal. People come out of their homes, and Elizabeth worries about her husband, who hasn't returned yet. After a while, she sees the car approaching and is relieved to find John safe. Tyler explains in detail what they did, saying that the birds have now settled in the high mountains and consider it their new home, so they won't return. Meanwhile, field researchers in the forest begin studying very strange types of insects. One of them follows the insects to find their source, only to encounter a massive monster that kills him. Tyler becomes suspicious after 3 days of no contact with the lab and decides to check on it himself, taking Elizabeth with him. They are surprised to find the door open, no one outside, and the place eerily quiet. The biggest shock comes when they find the entire scientific team inside, injured and in a strange condition. When they talk to them, they discover that the team has lost their memory and none of them know where they are or what they are doing there. They review recordings from the scientist Jonathan and understand from his notes that a disease is causing the memory loss, which was transmitted as an infection among them. Elizabeth is astonished by this information, and Tyler asks her to stay and continue researching to understand the exact cause and find a cure. Elizabeth communicates with her husband via video call, explaining the situation in the lab and asking him to keep it a secret. If the news spreads in the camp, people will panic and lose control. After a few days, John becomes worried about her and insists on checking on her himself. When he asks Malcolm for his car, Malcolm insists on accompanying him. When they arrive, they see two monsters eating the power cables. They fend them off and enter the lab, wearing masks because the air inside is contaminated. John is shocked when Elizabeth electrocutes him as soon as he enters, as she no longer remembers him at all. The only person she recognizes is Malcolm, who was her college classmate and first love. John is furious, as he had no idea about this, and it is a huge shock for him. Malcolm explains the situation in detail, telling John that Elizabeth has forgotten the last 20 years of her life. John tries to talk to her calmly, reminding her that she was working on a cure and must have made progress by now. Suddenly, they hear a commotion inside the lab. John searches the other rooms and, upon stepping outside, sees Tyler. Tyler attacks him, mistaking him for a thief, as he too has lost his memory. Injured, John decides to save his wife from what he believes to be imminent danger. He returns to the lab and informs the others about what happened with the leader. He warns them that if the leader reaches the camp, he will destroy everything, terrifying the people. With all communication cut off, John cannot contact Alyssa for help. He asks Malcolm to assist him in moving the injured leader, whom he found lying outside. John pressures Elizabeth to expedite the cure, but symptoms of the disease begin to appear on Malcolm as well. And he asks him why he suddenly dragged that corpse like that. Before he could finish his words, John pulls him quickly inside and shuts the door behind him. Because the monster is about to attack them. Unfortunately, the monster manages to break the door and is determined to reach them by any means. John is forced to hit Malik, hoping to snap him out of it, as he has no other solution. Elizabeth is shocked by all his actions, feeling that he is a violent person, and she blames him. John tries to justify what he's doing and explains the dangerous situation they are in. He is surprised that he is the only one who hasn't shown any symptoms, even though he breathed the same air as them. He suspects that his body might have an antidote to this disease and asks her to examine him. After a while, Elizabeth discovers that there was a scientist who had been working on a secret experiment on his own and was forced to create this strange gas that causes memory loss. Suddenly, John sneezes and starts showing symptoms of a cold. Elizabeth then understands why he wasn't affected like the others. It means that the cold protects him from this disease. She begins to create an antidote and starts using it on all the cases until morning. She explains to Taylor that they captured him at night while he was trying to blow up the camp and everyone in it. She tells him that his situation was very dire, and thankfully, she found the cure, otherwise, they all might have been killed by him. Elizabeth is able to save humanity and protect the camp from the danger that was about to destroy them all. Stay tuned for new videos and summaries.